Hello everybody again. We're continuing our conversation on Harkness teaching and learning in a mathematics class. And the topic of today's video is tracking. This question comes up often. And for those starting out, it's kind of a thing to play with. And I have a couple of viewpoints on tracking. So let me put that up here. I'm going to talk about 4 points as I've outlined on this slide. First and foremost, a purpose of tracking in Harkness discussion is data collection. If a teacher is interested in knowing some particular elements about how the Harkness discussion is going, tracking is a very useful tool. There's various things people can track. A number of times someone is speaking, the quality of the utterances that participants are showcasing. For example, or maybe body language, type of sentences, type of words. If it's a mathematics particular instances, we can track how much of mathematical vocabulary is being used. There's all kinds of elements that can be tracked with the tracking sheet, and I will take a look at the example of one below. That's the primary objective, is some kind of data collection that a teacher is interested in to track their discussion. Because a lot of times teacher is busy and you're involved in the conversation, and you're actively listening, you're participating, you're part of the Harkness discussion. It is easy to miss things that you're interested in, and tracking can provide such an opportunity to catch them and then pay attention to them after. The second point that tracking can be very useful for is it provides a task. We've discussed briefly in previous video about behavior around the table, and for those students who are too engaged, they offer too much, and this could serve as a buffer to reduce that. So they can be given a task to track, and they're able to do so, and then this way their voice is not there, while they're still doing very meaningful work. So it provides that avenue of that. So here's an example of one. I'm just going to scroll down below here. So you can see there's a date, tracker is the name of the person who is doing this, and a topic of the class. This could be, obviously this could change whichever way it's organized, but basically it's the oval. And then what's done, for example, if you want to track just the number of times someone's speaking, you could have your students' names and yourselves oriented as you're seated as a seating plan around the table. And then usually what people do is draw lines every time something is said. Whether it's said to the table, you connect it to the middle of the table. If it's said to a particular person, you would go from person A to person B and draw a line right through the table. And then if you want to know how much each person is speaking, how many times they've spoken, you would just count the number of lines that are here. That's the very typical way of tracking that's used most often, but there are others, and feel free to reach out to ask what are some other variations and what do they actually look like. We have some access to some of those as well. What I would caution people about is that, and we'll talk about evaluation and assessment later on in later videos. This is not the purpose of that today. This is just introducing the idea of tracking of the discussion. But what I would warn people about is that if this becomes too much of an evaluative tool where students are, and this came from the research that we've conducted with colleagues that clearly show that students get overwhelmed and authenticity of contributions goes down if tracking is used in I wouldn't call it a punitive way, but it's a way of evaluation. And we'll talk about evaluation, as I said, in the later videos to come. And the last thing is, we found that again through our research is that the most useful, one of the most useful purposes of and outcomes of tracking is the meta discussion. So once the discussion is complete, there's going to be some data available through the tracker, saying that the tracking tool, there's so many people, so many times this person have spoken, or and so on. Or if you're tracking something else, you could maybe pauses or use of particular words, something. You're tracking something, and so body language. That data will show up here. And then in the meta discussion, which is a discussion about a discussion, after the actual discussion that was for the learning of the material in the course that's been going on happened, to take the data that has been collected, put it up for everybody's view, and ask the question, okay, so what does this show us? What are some of the things we can get out of this? What are some things we can really celebrate? What are some of the things we can improve on? That has provided to be really meaningful in addressing and moving forward in deepening the level of Harkness conversation around the table in the classroom. It's through these kinds of meta discussions where we find the most use out of these trackers. So those are the points about tracking. Again, if you're interested in knowing about more examples of what each tracking tool looks like, or would like to try some in your classroom and then bring them back and share them, that would be a great place to start. Tracking is an important element, and I would encourage everyone to do it, because it does teach, first of all, yourself a lot about what's happening in your classroom, and second, of course, your students, if you are doing the meta discussion afterwards. As been said, is a very powerful tool. So hopefully you found this useful. There'll be more conversation about evaluation and assessment in future videos. Until then, take care and goodbye.